So yeah, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. As introduced, my name is Laura Gibson and I'm an analyst at the Canadian Centre for Education Statistics at Statistics Canada. And I've been invited to give you an overview today of the Education and Labour Market Longitudinal Platform, which we call ELMLP for short. And my background is actually in public health, so I'm particularly excited to not only share with you what we've been working on, but also to give you some ideas of how our data might be useful within a public health context. So to start, I'll go with a bit of an overview of like what is the ELMLP, and I actually prefer usually to start with an overview of what it's not. So the ELMLP is not like a large data set with integrated information from like multiple different sources. It's a relational data environment. So what that means is it includes different data sets that have some shared anonymous identifiers or ID keys that can be used to integrate different data from different sources. And it also allows for longitudinal cohort analysis. I'm sorry, I'm struggling a bit without my speaking notes, so I might just have to share the presentation this way, unfortunately. So the way that the MLP is built is a reflection of how at StatCan data security is our highest priority. As part of our mandate, guaranteeing the security of sensitive statistical information within Statistics Canada is a top priority. We deploy state-of-the-art tools and processes that prevent disclosure and ensure the confidentiality and privacy of individual data. And only aggregate non-confidential data are released outside of Statistics Canada. So the MLP was designed to allow study of the pathways that individuals take through the Canadian post-secondary system and also through apprenticeships, and also to look at the outcomes associated with those pathways. This remains our main objective. However, as the platform grows, we have added in some data on children at the kindergarten to grade 12. Children and youth, I guess, at the kindergarten to grade 12 age. And our core data sets focus still on so the real strength of the data as they relate to healthy children in your case is the information that we can get about the children's families and their geographical environments. And as such, the MLP data can be used in research of 3 social determinants of health, which are income and social status, education and literacy, and childhood experiences. So we have 3 core files within the MLP, and those act sort of as the body of the longitudinal platform. So these files are the Postsecondary Student Information System, or PSIS, the Registered Apprenticeship Information System, or RAISE, and the T1 family file. And I'll note that if you are familiar with any of these data sources, you'll note that not all years are available in the ELMLP context. That's because a certain level of completeness is generally required for longitudinal analysis, and more recent years have fewer data gaps. So the first core file that I mentioned is the Post-Secondary Student Information System, which is 2009-10 onwards. The PSIS, for short, is a national administrative survey on enrollments and graduates of Canadian public post-secondary institutions. It collects information pertaining to programs and courses offered at an institution, as well as information about the students themselves and which programs they're enrolled in. And the information is available from PSIS cross-sectional files, and then within the MLP, we're able to link certain years longitudinally. The Registered Apprenticeship Information System is sort of the apprenticeship side of like the PSYS file. And so it compiles data on the number of registered apprentices taking in-class or on-the-job training in the trades that are either Red Seal or non-Red Seal, and where apprenticeship training is either compulsory or voluntary. It compiles data on the number of provincial and interprovincial certificates that are granted to apprentices or trade qualifiers, also known as challengers. And the third of the core files is the T1 family file tax data, which is available from 1992 onward. So the T1FF is a source of data on income, tax credits, and deductions for individuals who have completed or filed, I guess, a T1 tax return and their dependents. So the T1FF, that's part of the Education and Labor Market Longitudinal Platform core files, is a subset file that's limited to the population of PSYS and RAISE. So to be found in that T1FF file, an individual must be found in either the PSYS or RAISE database for at least one reference year. And we have other T1FF subset files within the platform that correspond to other data files that we have, such as the BC K-12 dataset. And I would say the most important thing to remember about this file is the number of tax records that a person might have in our T1FF file is not limited to the number of years that the individual was in school. So even if they only went to post-secondary or apprenticeship for 1 year, all of their available tax records within that 1992 onward period would be included in that tax file, as long as they're found in PSYS or RAISE for at least 1 year. So to recap, we start with 3 core files of the ELMLP, which are updated every year. And now I'll cover some supplementary data sets in the ELMLP, which are updated on a more irregular basis, either because they're surveys with set cycles that don't occur every year, or because they come from data clients who provide updated data whenever they see fit. And before I get started with that, with the supplementary files, I'll give you a little bit of information about how the data files within ELMLP can be integrated. So the first method is directly merging 2 files using a common anonymized ID variable that's present on both files. So for most of our files within the ELMLP, that ID variable is called the register group ID. So for example, the 3 core files that I just mentioned can all be integrated using the register group ID without needing a separate concordance key file. And the second method is where 2 data files, you want to integrate them, but they have different ID variables, so you need a concordance key. And the supplementary data sets are kind of a mix between method 1 and 2. So if you are interested in applying to use any of these data in the research data centers, we would encourage you to ask your RDC analyst if you're not sure whether you need to ask for a concordance key or whether the files that you're asking for are okay on their own. So the first of our supplementary files is the census of population. The ELMLP contains concordance files for PSYS and RAISE and the 2016 census. And I'll just note that these keys are for the long form census only. So only integration is possible. Integration is only possible for up to 25% of individuals. And then the 2021 census keys and data will be available. We're expecting in March 2023, but that's still not like a final date. Second, we have the Longitudinal Administrative Data Bank, which is a longitudinal file designed as a research tool on income and demographics. And that the LAD has data available from 1982 to 2019. The value added of the LAD, Longitudinal Administrative Data Bank, in the ELMLP is that it includes income information for a 20% sample of all Canadians. So if you're looking for the outcomes of students or youth who do not pursue post-secondary education or an apprenticeship, you can access that information using the LAD. Next, we have the Longitudinal Immigration Database, or IMDb, which includes administrative immigration data for all immigrants since 1952 and for non-permanent residents since 1980. Outcomes for this population are available from tax files since 1982. Next, we have the 2018 cycle of the National Graduate Survey, which is a Statistics Canada survey that collected information from persons who graduated public post-secondary educational institutions in Canada they graduated in 2015. So the survey is a survey that's administered every 5 years, but only the 2018 cycle has been integrated within the ELMLP. And the questions on this survey focus on academic path, funding for post-secondary education, including government-sponsored student loans, and transition into the labor market. And so this is, you'll notice most of the data that I've named so far as administrative data, but we do have a few surveys that are important for kind of the qualitative aspect. So the National Graduate Survey allows us to measure things like subjective overqualification or like personal experiences during post-secondary. And so this next data set I've kind of already mentioned, but I'll really highlight it as the one that I think would be most useful for the work that you all do on healthy children. And that's our BC, British Columbia kindergarten to grade 12 data set. And these are data that are provided by the BC Ministry of Education. And it's student level information for students who attended BC's public and independent schools between the 1991-1992 school year and the 2020 to 2021 school year. And these data include information about student characteristics, gender, age, geographic location, et cetera, as well as their progress through the education system in terms of graduation, their foundation skills assessment results, which is like standardized testing in BC, as well as exam marks. And so also available with the BC K-12 data are the T1FF tax records for the children and the Census 2016 keys for the children, which are updated every time that BC provides additional data, or like additional years of data. But we also have several files available for the parents of the children in that data set. And those were made possible by client-sponsored projects. So the first one that we have is T1FF tax records of the parents of those children. And that's a really big asset in the platform because there's pretty limited information available on a student's family or like household, like census family income on their own tax records. So in order for a child to have a tax record in the T1FF child's file, they needed to have filed their own tax return in that year. And on that tax return, you would be able to see the family income, but you would really only be able to access that information for students who were at the age where they would be working a part-time job. So having these additional parent tax records is really useful because it allows you to look at a much larger sample of people, and also it allows you to look further back in time when the children were younger. And also this year we added 2 more files for the BC K-12 parents. So the first is the 2016 census key. And that's also super useful because as much as we have children's, like a child's census file, there's little to no information about their family on an individual's tax record, census record. But because the census is completed at the household level, if there's a census record for a child, there will probably also be one for at least one of their parents as well. So that's super useful. And we also have record of employment concordance keys available for the children and the parents. So again, those additional files were made possible through client-sponsored projects, so they aren't updated on a regular basis, but they are available for most of the years where we have BC K-12 data, which is really great. We also have information from the emergency and recovery benefits file. And this data set covers major income support measures that were offered to Canadians as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. Eventually, it will include data on the recovery benefits from 2021. So an example of those files would be CERB or CESB, which is the one for students. We also have information from the Canada Student Financial Assistance Program, which is formerly known as the Canada Student Loans Program. And this information is provided to us by ESDC, or Employment and Social Development Canada, who are the ones who manage this program. So we have data available from the 2003-2004 school year to the 2015-2016 school year. And the program itself provides non-repayable and repayable student financial assistance like grants and loans, which help eligible students to access and afford post-secondary education. I'll just note as well that Quebec, the Northwest Territories, and Nunavut are not included in this file because they don't participate in the program the same way that other provinces and territories do. The Government of Canada provides them transfer payments, and then they administer their own student financial aid. So there is a limitation to that file. The CESP, Canada Education Savings Program, is a directorate within ESDC, so also Employment and Social Development Canada, that's responsible for administering the education savings incentives. So that's mostly known to people as the Registered Education Savings Plan, or RESP, which is a savings vehicle that's used by individuals to save for children's post-secondary education. We also have data on the Canada Apprentice loans from 2015 to 2021. The Government of Canada offers Canada Apprentice loans to those registered in Red Seal apprenticeships who take block technical training. And these loans help to cover the cost of apprenticeship training. And an individual can receive up to $4,000 per technical training period for up to 5 training periods. Similarly, we have data on apprenticeship grants from 2007 to 2021. And this includes 3 types of grants. There's the Apprenticeship Incentive Grant, the Apprenticeship Completion Grant, and the Apprenticeship Incentive Grant for Women. And these are also data sets provided to us by Employment and Social Development Canada. So they are our Employment and Social Development Canada is our main partner in this producing this longitudinal platform. We also have National Apprenticeship Survey, which is sort of the apprenticeship equivalent of our National Graduate Survey. So we have the 2015 cycle that's been integrated within the platform. And the National Apprenticeship Survey is another Statistics Canada survey that collects information looking at factors affecting completion and certification and transition of apprentices to the labor market within Canada. We also have information from the Employment Insurance Status Vector, or EISV, from 2007 to 2018. And so that's an administrative data set that follows the trajectory of employment insurance claims and benefit payments from application to termination. And last but not least, this might be a data set that's of interest to you as well. It's the Survey of Approaches to Educational Planning, or SAPE, as we call it for short, which gathers information from parents and guardians about the strategies they use to prepare for their children's post-secondary education, their financial plans for paying for their schooling, and the barriers that they encounter to saving for their children's higher education. So as of right now, only the 2020 cycle of SAPE has been integrated within the ELMLP. And because most of our other data sets are related to post-secondary education and apprenticeships, and the children of interest in the SAPE survey are 17 years of age or younger, there's not a lot of utility for integrating those two data sets, or like the SAPE to other data sets within the MLP at this point. So I think the use of that file is really going to come down the road when more of those children actually end up enrolling in post-secondary education or apprenticeships. So just as a recap here, the MLP is not a large integrated data set. It's a relational data environment, and it uses unique anonymized IDs to allow integration of data files while protecting confidentiality. There are the three core files, which are the Postsecondary Student Information System, Registered Apprenticeship Information System, and T1 family file, which are generally updated in the March of every year. And then we also have supplementary and concordance files that are updated on an ad hoc basis. There are a few other databases that can be integrated within ELMLP, and this is generally done on a cost recovery basis. So if you're aware of any other information sources at StatCan that you really think would be interesting to look at in combination with any of our data sets, that type of linkage is always possible, but it usually needs to be funded by the researcher. And from here, I'll just put it back into slide mode so you can see a bit clearer. So just to give you a taste of what we have in terms of publications from the MLP. So we currently have 21 articles published to date. There are an additional 16 articles that are currently in development. And some of our recently released articles are listed on the slide there. So we had one on labor market outcomes of journey persons designated as visible minorities. Another one looking at post-secondary education graduates of 2010 to 2018 who received payments from the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, or CERB program. And we have a follow-up paper to that includes the Canada Emergency Student Benefit, or CESB. And then we also released a profile of Canadian graduates at the bachelor degree level belonging to a group designated as visible minority. And there's a second follow-up paper to that coming soon as well, which looks at their graduate outcomes in terms of earnings. And for the research data centers, we currently have over 90 active projects. And so that means that there are other researchers, either from like other federal or provincial and territorial government agencies or post-secondary institutions, and in some cases, like not-for-profit organizations who conduct research using our data in the StatCan research data centers. And on this slide, this is just a screenshot of one of our data visualization tools, which are really interesting. You can select a geography, which looks at, it includes the Canada level as well as the territories as a whole, due to smaller sample size. You can select different educational qualifications, age group, and gender, and then it provides you some information about how many graduates graduated in like a specific year. So in this case, 2015, what their median employment was 2 years after graduation, 5 years after graduation, the growth or difference in median employment income. This pie chart at the bottom looks at what students were doing at a specific time point after graduation. So whether they were reporting employment income, or whether they had gone back to school full time, or whether they had no income information. And then the bar chart here just looks at the median employment income by educational qualification. And then you can also look at all these by field of study as well, which you just do by toggling the two sort of bars at the top. And the Ray's program also has a data visualization tool, which is really interesting. This tool allows you to look at pathway indicators, median employment income, and interprovincial mobility. And you can look at all of these things by different trades, different geography. You can change the time range that you want to look at. So like the number of people who certify in their trade. In this case, the example is within 1.5 times the typical program duration. And the bar charts here you can see show what percentage of apprentices do end up certifying, whether they're still continuing their trade or whether they've discontinued their apprenticeship. And finally, I'll just give some tips for best practices for developing a research data center project proposal. So basically, what happens if you want to use any of these data sets in a research data center is you complete a proposal, and that goes to our data access division. And then they do kind of like a preliminary review, and then the proposal comes to our team. And our job is to evaluate the written proposal for whether it's appropriate for our data, whether you've asked for the appropriate files to answer your research questions, and whether you have all the specific files that you need to answer your research questions. So the first tip that I'll give you is that RDC projects must include multivariate modeling analysis, like regression. Any projects that basically just want to do like a large number of descriptive tables, or if they're described as like being a profile of a given population with no complex analysis, will have to be rejected or rerouted to other types of data access or data products, such as custom tabulations. You have to provide justification for each data file you request. So if we don't know why you need a specific file or how you plan to use it, we can't provide you access to it. So the best way to do that is just in your proposal, list out each of the files that you're looking for. If you know what variables are in it, you can list them there, or you can just sort of state conceptually why you need specific information. So like if you wanted to look at the BC K-12 parent tax data, you could say, well, we need this because we want to look at parental income of children as an explanatory factor. That would be sufficient. And the other thing to note is if you wish to request 2 different integrated files and they require a concordance key, you have to request each of the microdata files separately. So you would need to request access in this example to the Postsecondary Student Information System microdata, as well as the Census 2016 microdata. And then you would need the key, the concordance key that connects the 2 files as well. And I realize that it's sort of impossible for external researchers to know which of our files need a concordance key and which ones don't. And that's where your RDC analyst can be really helpful. So we would suggest, just talking to them if you have any questions about that. For more information, we have an overview of all the data sets that are in the Education and Labor Market Longitudinal platform, which is available online, as well as a list of data available in the research data centers. And so we can send out these slides afterwards and you can access the links. But the second one is probably the quickest way to see what's available under our platform. And then the overview document will give you a bit more information on what years are available and like descriptions of all the data sets. So thank you very much for joining me on your lunch hour today. I have enjoyed kind of giving an overview of everything that we do on our team. And I would be happy to take any questions or comments if you have any.
Thanks a lot, Laura. If anyone has any questions or comments, just if you use the raise hand function, and I'll just call upon you. I'll get started. Can I just ask a very, very basic question to begin with? When you say, can you just like conceptually explain to me what you mean by the difference between a relational data environment and an integrated data set in terms of what that actually means for researchers? Because does that, yeah, sorry, maybe I'll just leave it at that.
Sure, yeah. So what we mean by relational data set is that there's the potential for each of our data sources to be integrated or linked together, but they're all stored separately. So let's say if you wanted to look at like Postsecondary Student Information System and the Census 2016, those are stored separately.
So you
like
need a
different
unique
files.
linkage for every individual project that wants to do that.
So a lot of our data sets use a similar ID variable. So basically, like what happens when we